Good morning, everyone. Now, the second part of my year in review, 2024, is my book year in review. And I'm kind of hesitant where books are concerned to give recommendations because people's views on books are so subjective. And I have had situations where I've loved a book and then I will hear on YouTube or in person somebody talking about how horrible the book is. How can you possibly like this? And it just makes me realize instead of saying, this was awesome and you should read this, I should say instead, I thought it was awesome. It landed with me. Maybe it won't with you. Everybody's different, but it landed with me. So, first thing I want to talk about with regard to my reading year in review is a more general note that this was the year that I really made friends with my Kindle. Prior to 2024, I would read my Kindle, but the Kindle reads always seemed to be an afterthought. And it would take me 3 times as long to get through a book on Kindle as it would for me to get through a print book. But this year, in the mornings, before I get up, I usually scroll Facebook to kind of waken my senses, get me out of bed. This year, the morning after the election, I tried to look at Facebook, and it was just so depressing because every post was about that election. And it overwhelmed me a little bit. So I was like, okay, I need to find a new way of getting up in the morning. So I moved my iPad from my office to my bedroom and decided that for the foreseeable future, I would wake myself up reading something on my Kindle. Facebook has gotten better. There are a lot more posts that just involve general living, books, movies, and music, which are things that I really like, lots of cat videos. So Facebook is a lot more tolerable now, so I do scroll through there sometime. But I have made more of a habit of reading my Kindle at the beginning of an ordinary day. And sometimes I will get so caught up in my Kindle read that I will read it later on instead of picking up a print book. So now it's not that I have fallen out of love with print books. No, no question about that. It's just now my print reads and my Kindle reads are on a lot more of an equal footing. Last year, the very end of last year, I finished rereading a childhood favorite, The Secret Garden, on Kindle. I also read a, I don't know, you might call it a guilty pleasure, but the Katerina Poe Mysteries. Not, very small press, not a very popular book, but it's basically stories with a mystery bent narrated by Edgar Allan Poe's tortoiseshell cat. So, obviously, being the cat person I am, I got a kick out of that. So, those books did cheer me up, brighten my day at a time when my days needed brightening. So, very happy that I've made better friends with my Kindle. But as for my standout reads, what were some of the things that stood out for me in my reading year 2024? First, a book called Clytemnestra. This was one of 2 books that I gave 5 stars. My usual number of stars for books I really like a lot on Goodreads is 4. But this one I gave 5 stars to because it just held me in its grip so firmly. And it told a story that I'd been familiar with since my childhood. The South Georgia College theater program, where my dad taught and where he acted in a number of plays, they put on a performance of Aeschylus' Agamemnon. And this was before I was even 10 that my dad took my sister and me to see this thing. And all that I remember caring about was hoping that the character played by one of my favorite babysitters would survive till the end. Spoiler alert, she was playing the role of Cassandra and she did not survive to the end. But one of the reasons why a lot of writers, and particularly a lot of feminist writers, do these myth retellings is because in the original mythology, in Aeschylus, in Homer, in the works that are left to us after centuries have passed, the writers are inclined to take the guy's side. They will take the side of the men at the center of things. That's who they expect their audience to take an interest in and perhaps root for. And as to some of their questionable behavior regarding girls and women, we're not supposed to think too deeply about that. But Agamemnon has always been the bad guy, regardless of what time bandits would have you believe. He's always been the bad guy. And finally, works like Clytemnestra are bringing this out. This man is a swine. Are we really supposed to be okay with his sacrificing his oldest daughter to the gods? Are we supposed to be fine with that? So, reading Clytemnestra's story as it takes her from her youth in Sparta through her unwilling marriage to Agamemnon, who also had her first husband killed. So that's another reason why she might legitimately want him dead. And then going through the abusive marriage in which her children are really the only highlight. She's not a perfect character. She's not a likable character, but she is a character you can understand. So I enjoyed that journey through her point of view. And again, Costanza Casati, her prose was particularly strong as she creates this complex, not always likable point of view. Another work I gave 5 stars to, this I read at the very beginning of the year, and I good according to Goodreads, it's the first 2024 book review I posted. So my memories of it aren't quite as clear, but it's by Hannah Kamer and it's called God Killer. And in this particular book, you have a main character who, as the title might suggest, has the power to kill gods. And the book centers on the relationship she forms with a young girl who is put into her care and a young man with whom she travels as she's trying to get this young girl to where she needs to be. And my liking for it, again, the prose is strong, it held me in its grip. And on the one hand, I really appreciated the bond between the woman and the girl. I always love to read about bonds between female characters, but it also developed its romance effectively. And these days, more and more, because there are a lot of really awful romances on the market nowadays, just very toxic situations where the physical attraction, the passion is really all the couple has going for them. They don't really interact in any meaningful way. And it has led to a lot of requests on Reddit and other places. Please recommend me something that has little to no romance. They just don't want any romance in their books at all, or if it is there, it's only a blip on the radar because of just how saturated the market has become with these poorly written romances. And the one in Godkiller is, at least I think, quite effective because it is slow burn and it does show the characters feeling each other out, getting to know each other, and discovering that they have values in common. And these days, I appreciate a romantic plot that models that because we could still use romance. It's just that we need better written romances, higher quality romances to model a good relationship. So there's that one. Other books that I enjoyed this year. One of the nonfiction books I read this year was David Grann's Killers of the Flower Moon, which I read after seeing the film. And the book is better than the movie. I know that people have complained about the movie being too long and too slow. Those complaints are not illegitimate. I did enjoy the movie partly because I liked seeing a movie set in that particular time period. Movies tend to ignore the first 5 years of the 1920s. But the book is actually a lot better. And it goes into a lot more detail, particularly about the central female figure in the story. Song of the Huntress by Lucy Holland, another really good book that does a slow burn romance. You have M/F in Godkiller, so it's a heterosexual romance. The Song of the Huntress goes into detail about a lesbian couple. The Battle Drum, which is the second book in the Ending Fire trilogy by Sara El Arifi. The bad thing about books, the part two of a trilogy, that when books come in part two, they tend to end with everybody at their lowest point. So I am looking forward to reading the third part, which I got for Christmas, and seeing how they're going to dig their way out of the hole if they do. Another book that I've already talked about, but it is a 2024 read, is A Woman's View, How Hollywood Spoke to Women, 1930 to 1960. I already talked a little bit about this, did a specific vlog on this book, and not going to say all that much more about it except that it is a very fascinating look at the way that female characters were portrayed during what we call the classic Hollywood era. So I read a total of 24 books this year, and those were some of the ones that stood out for me as particularly memorable and particularly enjoyable. So who knows what my 2025 year in reading will bring. Goodbye.